boys who perform this custom on their own. He's accused them of secluded meetings outside traditional structures and perform the initiation custom unlawfully. The chief says such people hide their victims until it's too late to help those encountering health difficulties. He says some of the people running the illegal schools go there drunk, and they punish the boys through beatings and do not allow them to even drink water, something he says goes against the custom. Now, over 550 initiates have died in Limpopo, the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga provinces in the past 6 years. Close to 500,000 have since been hospitalised. This emerged during the launch of the report on public hearings on initiation schools in South Africa. Thoko Mkhwanazi Xaluva, the chairperson of the Commission of Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities, says the causes of deaths include dehydration and kidney failure. She joins us now in the studio to discuss this and more. Good morning to you, Thoko.
Good morning.
First and foremostly, if we look at the situation in the initiation schools, it is a serious situation. So what prompted then yesterday's public hearings?
What prompted our launch of the report was that we've been observing, because we're there to promote and protect cultural practices, to say what is going on and what has gone wrong, so much so that so many young people can die, and a lot of them end up with amputations, and a lot of them end up with serious health issues. So we conducted this report. We've been holding public hearings since 2006 because we needed to be sure of what this is and how we can intervene. We've reached a stage where we've come up with recommendations. We have looked at the gaps, and the biggest gap for us is lack of legislation.
Lack of legislation. So how does that impact then on the initiation schools themselves?
It impacts in the sense that where there's no regulation, everything goes wide. If, as the chief was saying, anyone can open up a school anyway, even young people themselves can open up their own schools, it's lack of regulation that allows for that to happen. So we need tight regulation to say who can and who cannot, and for you to be able to open up a school, what credentials should you have, and how do we monitor that? And if people transgress, what sort of punishment should be meted out by the courts? Because we feel so long as it's based on, yeah, he has opened up a school and we shut it down, and then the next day he opens up another school, it's a never-ending crisis. So as the Civil Rights Commission was saying, the crisis has gone on long enough.
Now, legislation is important, and if that comes to pass, if there's legislation, how will you monitor it and how will it be implemented?
It will be monitored by ourselves, and we are expecting traditional leaders to monitor it. We'll also be expecting local government to monitor it. Some of these schools are urban-based, so the crisis runs throughout the country, and will also be part of the monitoring, aggressively part of it.
According to the report, the SABC should make arrests, but there's no charge for these people that, to be arrested. Has a new charge been established for such a case?
Well, for the cases that happened last year, the SABC and the NPA is looking at how these people can be charged, what they can be charged with. That for us is problematic. When there's a body in the mortuary and there's someone in hospital, we shouldn't be looking. We should know exactly where the transgression happened, and we should have legislation on hand to say, you violated this clause here, and we're arresting you based on that, and the court should say, yes, you violated this, and you should be sentenced accordingly. So while there's still a lack of legislation, we're saying let's try by all means to look at how we protect and promote those initiates and their families, who then have to pick up the pieces at the end of the day to make sure that this cultural practice is safe, to make sure that it lasts for much longer, because it will die if these deaths and these hospitalizations happen. To sustain it and to make sure that it is there for our great-grandchildren to go through, we need to protect and to promote it.
Now, you've mentioned the SABC, you've mentioned the NPA, but what is the Health Department's role in all of this?
The health department, unfortunately, ends up being the ambulance because they then run after the crisis. So we're saying they need to be involved upfront in the planning, in the certification, in the training, in all those things, so that they are not called to bring an ambulance when there's a crisis.
Now, it seems like it's going to be a multi-departmental approach really to solve the issue. Is that what I'm getting?
That's what we're saying, because it's a huge problem, and it's a cultural problem. We're saying it needs to be handled with the sensitivity it deserves. There are sacred issues in this thing, and there are secrets we don't want to be involved in or to divulge into. What we're saying is that we need to protect it and its sacredness, but we need those young men coming back in one piece.
How do we do that, though? How do we educate people about the culture itself and the initiation schools to make sure that there is no deaths within those initiation schools?
Part of it is that, as the Civil Rights Commission was saying, we're going to go on a public awareness campaign to make people conscious of the fact that culture stops when an initiate ends up in hospital or in a mortuary. Culture is when we take them there happily and bring them back to us happily. But we are also saying to traditional leaders, what is the role of women? What was the role of women before this thing became what it was? There are definite responsibilities that were there for women, culturally speaking, that have slowly been eroded. And everybody will tell you, this is not women's business. But we're saying, Utatba, who's your father's sister, used to be intricately involved in this business for some reason that our ancestors felt was critical. What you hear now is that this is not women's business. Of course, women don't want to be part of the initiation in terms of the circumcision or to go to the mountain. But we're saying we give birth to these children. And we need to know what their health status is.
The report is out. What is the next steps now?
The report is out. We'll be going to Parliament. We're giving Parliament time to settle down, not a long time. And we'll be there knocking, saying, we're in a crisis. You need to prioritize this urgently. We'll be going to different departments to say, help us push this thing through Parliament as urgently as possible. We'll be approaching local government. We'll be talking to SALGA. We'll be talking to the National House of Traditional Leaders. We're meeting with them tomorrow to say, let's work on this fast.
Thoko, thank you so much for joining us here on AM News in studio. That was Thoko Mkhwanazi Xaluva, the chairperson of the Commission of Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities.